is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, February 24th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alex Pareene of the AP and the New Republic. The AP, the good one, the newsletter. And later in the show, Olayemi Olurin, movement lawyer and political commentator, will be joining us. Meanwhile, today marks the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion and war of aggression in Ukraine. I just cannot believe it's been a year. Days after the Polish president's meeting with Biden, Polish tanks delivered to Ukraine, and the U.S. has announced a new round of Russian sanctions. The federal EPA has some concerns about the samples provided to them by the Ohio authorities in East Palestine. Seems like the Ohio EPA relied on Norfolk Southern for their testing. Well, we'd reported on that before, but makes sense.
Stop testing, just don't test.
Then there's no chemicals. Although, we will talk about how the Republicans are seizing on this. It's interesting, honestly, politically. Hundreds of thousands are without power in the Midwest after blistering winter storms, and snow hits Southern California. Malcolm X's family is suing the NYPD, FBI, and other agencies over the mounting evidence that law enforcement played a role in his assassination. Tennessee has passed the first ban on drag shows in the nation. First offense is a misdemeanor. Second is a felony. It's headed to the Republican governor's desk, where he is widely expected to sign it. And they also passed a ban on gender-affirming care for minors. So that's happening throughout the country. The U.S. has released 2 Pakistani brothers from Guantanamo Bay, who were held in the prison for 20 years without charges. Students across Florida walked out yesterday in protest of Ron DeSantis' censorship push.
Speaking of Guantanamo Bay.
Right off that coast. Oh, yes, right. And, what do we know of his role there? Not much?
Maybe have Mike Prison around to talk about that.
We should. Guantanamo DeSantis also is making it easier to sue journalists in Florida. Harvey Weinstein sentenced to 16 years in prison in LA for his rape conviction. That's on top of the 23 years in New York. He will likely die behind bars. As a Trump-appointed Texas judge is expected to rule as soon as today on banning the abortion pill. Any appeal process has to go through the right-wing Fifth Circuit, because it's Texas, then the right-wing Supreme Court. It's bad, bad news. New charges announced against FTX crypto fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried. And lastly, Minnesota state lawmakers have ended a requirement that you need a driver's license to apply for legal residence, which is a win for tens of thousands of immigrants. What's happening in Minnesota right now is a really good example of what can happen when Democrats take back their state houses, and progressives too. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Casual Friday, long week. I'm here with just Matt Leck. If you hear that construction in the background, I've been saying this, people can't hear it, but then we put on a noise filter.
No, they can probably hear it. It sounds like a World War I battle out there with artillery fighting.
There was bells earlier because it was noon. Just lots of noise. We'll see how this plays out in the coming months. Like, they're building from scratch here.
I'm anxious to see how Sam deals with this, because I feel like he hasn't been here on a day when it's been like this.
No, they save it for me.
Yeah, they're like, all right, Cedar's not in. Let's do the heavy pounding.
And they started literally at noon too. So
yeah, I was thinking we had a Friday off. Maybe they let the guys stay home today. Nope.
So the whole building shakes, and we have to deal with that. But regardless, let's have a little bit of fun on this Casual Friday, because I noticed this last night. I'm not the only one to have noticed this. But Sean Hannity's been asking the same question of every Republican presidential hopeful that has come on his program recently. What policy differences do you have with Donald Trump? And this is an illustration of what I think we've been saying for a while on the show, what I said a few months ago when we covered Ron DeSantis, and I was like, this guy doesn't have it. And I mean, he's pretty much the only Republican in this field that I think stands a chance against Trump, and I don't think he does. These other people are running really for VP, I think. And I don't think Tim Scott has officially announced. But watch their reaction and their inability to answer when Hannity asks them a simple question to differentiate themselves from Donald Trump. They are so terrified, quaking in their boots. None of them can answer. This is Nikki Haley. We played this before, but this will highlight just how scared all the Republican candidates are.
If you had to delineate where, say, you and President Trump differ on issues, where would you start?
Well, first, let's say in reference to Whoopi, the thought of me getting into the race makes the liberals' heads explode. And so I welcome it because it shows
Whoopi Goldberg, we're starting
right. When it comes to what we're looking at now, listen to the first 20 minutes of your show.
He didn't ask what you're looking at now.
Yeah.
He asked what your difference in policy is.
Well, first of all, Whoopi Goldberg. All right, that was so we played this clip before. She goes on to not say anything. He also follows up with her. She doesn't say anything again. She cannot name any policy differences with Trump. But this was Tim Scott from 2 days ago. This was the 22nd. He had him on Wednesday night. Also unable to name any policy differences with him and Trump.
What are the differences in terms of policy positions that, for example, you may have with President Trump?
Probably not very many at all. I am so thankful that we have President Trump in office. Frankly, the policies that we were able to pass from 2017 to 2020 were monumental, and thank God.
Yeah, so there's that. And then here we go. Third hat being thrown into the ring. Nope. Third guy in the race. It's all good. Vivek Ramaswamy, who's somebody who just got very wealthy and now has presidential ambitions himself, asked again last night now by Sean Hannity, what policy differences do you have with Trump? Still 3 for 3, can't answer.
Yeah, and I've never heard of this guy. Have you?
He did. He was a hopeful in Ohio, and it didn't work out for him. He seems like he's going to be the Andrew Yang, really rich guy, using the primary to kind of catapult himself to new heights.
Gotcha.
That's the vibe I get from Ramaswamy.
Looking for the Republican nomination. Probably the leader right now would be Donald Trump if you look at the polls. What are the policy differences you have between yourself and Donald Trump?
So first of all, Donald Trump's a friend. I'm not running against him. I am running on a vision for our nation.
Wait a minute, but you're not running for him. You're running against him. Let's be honest.
Okay, well, here's what I'm running for our country. But let's talk about differences, because I'm with you, Sean. He was the OG of America First. I'm taking that to the next level with America First 2.0.
Whoa!
Let's actually get the job done, which means
2.0?
dismantling federal bureaucracy.
I get AOL
Instead of actually these managerial protections and civil service protections, I'm proposing 8-year sunset clauses for anybody in the federal bureaucracy. If I can't derive a paycheck from the federal government as the next U.S. president, for more than 8 years. I don't think other federal bureaucrats should either. I'm going to shut down federal agencies. Earlier today, I put out my proposal to actually shut down the Department of Education, which should not exist. That's just the first of many government agencies that I am pledging to shut down as the next president.
All right. Well, yeah, he's advocating for America First system update.
I'm cool.
Restart your computer to install America First.
Yeah, like there are agencies that I think like are too powerful by virtue of their length. Like I wouldn't start with Department of Education. I think like we probably need one of those, and it's good to have like some longitudinal wisdom there. I think the CIA would probably be the first example.
Oh yeah, if you were to take a crack at it, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit more here, but I just want to think like, what is? First of all, it's hard to know how many of these people are actually running against Trump, or if they're stalking horses that are ultimately going to endorse Trump against DeSantis. And I'm not sure who is who at this point.
Well, this guy has absolutely nothing to lose in this instance. He's just trying to get his name out there. He's not really a actual viable, I think, VP candidate either.
Yeah, he can sell some books.
But it still is interesting to see where he thinks he can make some hay with the Republican base, including this whole Department of Education thing.
I am dismantling this climate religion. We have been addicted to a climate religion that shackles the United States while leaving China untouched. So I think this is about taking it to the next level as far as I see it.
You know, maybe I'll take it to the next level because I took it to the first level and I don't really know who you are. So see ya.
Yeah, you're nobody. You don't have a level up ability. That's me. Save America, vote Vivek. I mean, he really should have come up with something better than America First 2.0. America First turbocharged. Gasoline powered America First. Horsepower.
I'm one of the people
first.
who wants as many people to join this as possible, but like I want them to be like people with something to lose and not just entirely something to gain by getting their name.
Well, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley.
Yeah, Nikki Haley, exactly. Those are the fun ones that Trump like beating up on is going to be fun if they actually come to it.
But I mean, the more the merrier, honestly. I want this to be an absolute bloodbath. In the end, what it feels like, honestly, is that this primary is already over before it's begun. That can change. I understand that. I know that there's investigations into Trump. Don't think that really matters to Republican voters. It seems like a little bit more of what liberals are hoping is going to be the ultimate kill shot, so to speak. It's not
a good way to fundraise along the way, maybe.
That too. But I mean, they're liberals genuinely feel that way. Like, when's the next thing that's going to take this guy down? And the reality is that the Republican voter doesn't care about the next like litany of charges being brought against him in Georgia or by the New York Attorney General's office and civil procedure. That's it. If you think that matters to a Republican primary voter, you're living in a different universe. So he'll keep buying McDonald's and these guys will keep holding their fire, not criticizing the guy that they would have to beat to win in this primary. Maybe they're not that serious about winning. I understand. It's certainly this guy isn't. But people like DeSantis, this it's not a good climate for them, for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but first we have a word from a few of our sponsors here. Have you heard of Nutrafol? I have. I actually had a friend, or it was my sister's friend. She was sick, and she took Nutrafol, and it helped her with her hair growth substantially. And I know that it's helped some men as well. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, thickness, and visible scalp coverage for men and women. It's the hair growth supplement that goes beyond genetics to target stress, hormones, nutrition, metabolism, aging, and lifestyle factors that may be impacting your hair. And it's all natural, right? It's not those drugs that you have to take that have all those side effects. It's just essentially supplements. Nutrafol has unique formulas for men and women to provide exactly what they need based on their biology and age. Every formula is physician formulated using natural medical grade ingredients for reliable results. In clinical studies, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after 6 months. Nutrafol is trusted and recommended by more than 1,000 top doctors. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support the Majority Report by going to Nutrafol, Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code TMR to save $15 off your first month subscription. This is their best offer anywhere, and it's only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. Plus, free shipping on every order of Nutrafol. Get $15 off at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR, and you can get $15 off. Now, we've spoken about Aura a few times. Sam has said how much it's helped him, with his general neurosis about identity theft and other things. But Aura's great. It keeps all of your security online in one place. It's an easy-to-use app that includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the so-called dark web, where criminals sell stolen information looking for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers. It alerts you fast if it finds anything. If Aura found any of your private information on the dark web, let your audience know. It serves as a powerful visual. If you are comfortable with it, share the specific, I should say, never mind. They help you fight back against those annoying websites that make your personal information public by automatically requesting removal of your info. This helps reduce robocalls. Aura gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like if someone was opening a loan or credit card in your name. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted, and they protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, and more, so the bad guys cannot break in. Aura even helps you manage what your kids can do on their devices. You can restrict specific apps, set screen time limits, and even set focus times to ensure your child is doing their homework instead of binging on YouTube. And their password manager lets you store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently. You might have an app that already does some of this stuff, but as I mentioned earlier, with Aura, you don't have to download and pay for 7 separate apps or 10 separate apps, 5. It's all in one place. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. Go to aura.com/majority to start your free trial, also linked below in the description, or scan the QR code Aura, AURA.com/majority to start your free trial. You can find that in the link below. And lastly, Sunset Lake, Seder. Use the code Left is Best for 20% off. You know that this is one of our favorite sponsors. They use regenerative farming practices, among many other things. Sunset Lake really is. I am being 100% honest here. I use it nightly. I have that gummy with melatonin and CBD in it, and it tastes good, and it helps me sleep. I'm a bad sleeper. I'm like a late night thought racing person, and this has helped immensely with that. And you don't have like the guilt of saying, I'm gonna take some NyQuil because I can't get to sleep. It's 2 a.m, and then I'm completely out of my mind the next day. I didn't feel like I slept at all. I've gotten out of that habit because oversharing, because of Sunset Lake Seder. It is much, much better for you, and it's natural in terms of helping you sleep, but it also has a bunch of other uses, like just want to pre-roll, want to calm down, crumble it in with your other pots and such, and
or you throw some of their smalls into your grinder and fill out your smokables.
Right, exactly. That's a healthier option than like if you're rolling something and putting tobacco in it.
Oh, absolutely. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I used to know somebody who, yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't like that. And plus I love their cream too. It smells amazing, the scented one. And their tinctures, they're just, I give them to people and they're like, I use this during the day to relax. It's really an excellent product. Sunset Lake, Sebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST for 20% off. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Alex Pareene. We are back, and we are joined by none other than wonderful friend of the show, Alex Pareene of the AP Substack newsletter, The Good AP, contributing editor to the New Republic and host of the Politics of Everything, the show over there. Alex, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Emma. Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you. So, East Palestine dominating the news this week. I've been fascinated to see how the Republicans have seized on this opportunity to make some sort of political stand. I think they noticed that, Biden was in Ukraine. They figured that they could use this as an opportunity to connect some of the language you've seen on, why is all this money going to Ukraine when it could be going to X, Y, and Z, or attack Biden on infrastructure not being sufficient despite the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not exactly sure where they're going with it, because if you dig a tiny bit deeper, you see that, Trump was a part of the deregulatory process that leads to these kinds of things. What's been your take on this past week of this kind of crescendo of Fox and other right-wing coverage of East Palestine?
Well, I mean, it's purely opportunistic, I think, as you correctly note. I think it's seen as a convenient cudgel against Biden, right? And I think it's being treated mainly just as a way to, make this administration look bad and to sort of hammer against the usual right-wing bugbear of we're spending too much money on foreign aid, or in this case, Ukraine. We're spending too much money on them, and we're not doing enough for us. The sort of really obvious counterpoint to that is, as you say, the deregulatory push. I mean, in addition to it happening under Trump, is just a long time Republican agenda item, right? I mean, in their ideal policy world, we would be having an East Palestine every month or so. But, the reality doesn't quite so much matter. But I think what's interesting in a sort of depressing and unfortunate way is that they're roping it into this sort of culture war thing, and it's becoming I guess to paraphrase Kanye, it's becoming a Joe Biden doesn't care about white people thing.
Right.
That's sort of what they're going for here. And it's sort of painfully, obvious but what the administration can't really do, and what Biden can't do, and is counter it effectively, because it's a disaster that happened under their watch. Yep. And they're not interested in, I think that they could say, Trump led the deregulatory effort that led to this, but they haven't rolled it back, right? And they haven't shown any interest in reversing those moves.
Yes.
So what can you do to defend against this politically if you did nothing to prevent it from happening, and have shown really little interest in the kind of moves that might have prevented it?
Yeah, let's also pull up that Buttigieg thing, because I think that fits in well with what you're saying here, Alex. I mean, that's what's been frustrating for me to see, is the administration has fallen back on a really old habit that Democrats have gotten embedded into their DNA over the past few decades, which is consistently being on the back foot of a narrative, and not being able to get out ahead of things, responding all the time to Republican narrative setting, and having to play catch up, as opposed to blasting from the airwaves, like, Norfolk Southern, a DeWine donor, right? Donald Trump deregulated the railroads, and so this is what we have here. And I think what compounds that is the fact that a few months ago, Biden voted or got the rail strike broken.
Right.
And so their safety concerns, which are also at the forefront of this, and the fact that workers were so overworked in this instance and spread thin, and the cars were way too long, creating that instability and fewer workers on those trains. They don't really have a leg to stand on there either. So now they're just responding to a Republican narrative as opposed to making their own case, and then additionally being proactive and being like the more pro-Union Joe president by not breaking the strike.
Yeah, and it's as you say, it becomes defensiveness, and defensiveness is never a good sort of political message, and it becomes defensiveness because they don't, they can't make the persuasive positive case, against the actual villains here, because they haven't done enough to hold the villains accountable.
Yeah. Well, let's play this Buttigieg clip here. Buttigieg finally on the ground in East Palestine. It took him 3 weeks, and he came the day after Trump, which I don't think people are going to forget, and Biden still has not been there. But this was his message, where he essentially implores the railroads to stop fighting regulation. Where my take would be, why don't you impose your will on them as the head of the Department of Transportation? But he's a smooth talker. Let's see how he frames this.
But also, Norfolk Southern and the other freight rail companies need to stop fighting us every time we try to do a regulation in order to hold them accountable and their other railroad companies accountable for their safety record. And what we've seen is industry goes to Washington and they get their way. They got their way on the ECP rule. They got their way on a Christmas tree of regulatory changes that the last administration made on its way out the door in December of 2020. I think they're getting their way on the fines being too low. I'm sorry, but if the biggest fine we can charge on a violation is $250,000 or less, and that's an egregious hazmat violation to get somebody killed, that is not enough for a multi-billion-dollar company. Well, we're acting on it with the authorities we have, and calling on members of Congress to act on it with the authorities they have, and the railroads not to wait on us to require them to do the right thing on their own.
3 equal parties in this process.
Yeah, we're all partners.
Yeah, we're all just working together. We've got to just sync up, and it's a workflow problem, right? I mean, they just need a Slack and a 3-joint channel where they can communicate more effectively.
I mean, that's exactly the mindset here, though. Is that the railroads are partners in this. And when you come to it with that point of view, like, all you can really think to do when you're up there at the microphone is be like, we need them to be better partners. Like, we need them. And in what world is any industry, let alone the railroad, in what world is any industry going to go to the federal regulators and say, make us do better, or like please be harder on us? That's not their job. To stop fighting us is a loser message. It's a complete loser message, and especially when you cannot articulate. You say on the way out the door, they got a Christmas tree of regulatory freebies from the Trump administration. So on your way in the door, where were your new regulations?
I mean, not to get sidetracked on the rhetorical device there, but you get a Christmas tree? It's more like, what's under the Christmas tree?
Yeah, I think he's usually very articulate, but I think he got that one got a little lost on him.
Also, can I just enter into this conversation? Like, Pete Buttigieg's dad is a Marxist, expert on Antonio Gramsci. He has no excuse not to know this.
Right.
Wow. I mean, that's just, but he is a McKinsey consultant through and through. I've been saying this, for a few weeks now. It's not really as much incompetence from his end, in my opinion. It's that he's ideologically much more aligned with the railways, and he was so ideologically aligned with the freight rail, I should say, that's why he was so slow to understand what this looked like politically for the Biden administration, for his own presidential ambitions, because he wanted to kind of keep a cordial relationship where they're working as partners, as you say, Alex. And it's just, again, the optics of it too. We need them to step up. What would have been strong would have been a week or so ago, just announce your efforts for regulatory clawbacks or for what you were going to do action-wise. It's just passive language that works in a boardroom.
Yeah,
it definitely doesn't work on the stump.
And I think it's so, and again, it's so against his nature to be populist and to say, I think even getting to the point where he is up there saying like they're bad partners is like just not in his nature. I think it's difficult for him.
Yes, it's an improvement for him.
Right. Yeah, and I think like that for him counts as like fiery populist rhetoric, and it's got to be frustrating because if your worldview says if we pursue efficiency and we work in good faith with industry, then they will work in good faith with us, and everything will. If we align ourselves, government and industry working hand in hand, that'll work out best for everyone. If that's what your worldview says, no, you can't deal with a crisis like this. You just can't, because it doesn't compute.
Yeah, and it is. Also, it should be noted, and it doesn't really change the political optics of it, but, Donald Trump is only there because it's an opportunity for him to hit Biden. Right. If he were in office, this would not be where he would be right now. He would be downplaying it. But that doesn't change that reality that when you're the group in the party in power and the administration, that you have to anticipate that disasters that happen under your watch are going to be seized on politically. And it was, I think, a significant miscalculation. And the Republicans have been just flailing about for a few months now, especially now that, Kevin McCarthy is this completely limp and ineffective leader in the House. They can't coalesce behind what they want to hold the economy hostage over with the debt ceiling. They were saying it was behind closed doors. It was going to be Medicare and Social Security cuts, but then Biden called them out in the State of the Union, and they're unable to really do that now. Now it's, snap work requirements, which is just like, easy mode for the Republican Party. But now they feel that they have some sort of, foot in the door here, so to speak. This was a real unforced error by Biden.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah.
Here, let's actually, though, this is a fascinating wrinkle. Fox and Friends has been quietly ramping up their critique of Donald Trump, honestly, within the context of the derailment in East Palestine. Let's take a listen, because this is, shockingly critical of the former president, their guy, and they know he's watching. He likes, well, maybe not as much anymore because they're rhinos. Well, but this used to be his favorite show.
This feels like, is it Ducey DeSantis? But
here we go.
Working class area will live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have money to go stay in a Four Seasons.
Plus, they go there to get answers, and the company doesn't show up, Norfolk Southern, because they're scared. They said that they're worried about their safety. Right. And then the people are asking questions. They're screaming out questions. If you watch the full video when they're sitting here in the high school auditorium or gymnasium, and Bill Johnson, the congressman, he said, look, the White House is not here. If you have a question, then write it down. Here's my card. Send it to me, and all the questions will be answered. I will contact the White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits. Nobody understands, and you know, when they
That's just, well, I mean, Ducey, he's the most anti-Trump of those guys.
Yeah.
And there's this constant, you know, unspoken tension, particularly between him and Kilmeade, who seethes whenever Ducey really speaks. We had the B-roll, so we couldn't see him like white knuckling it over there. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, what do you make of that? I mean, I think Republicans are getting panicked at how much Trump seems to be already running away with this thing as of now. And DeSantis is doing his crime tour of, like, DeSantis is doing crime tours of Philly and Chicago and New York, and Trump's in East Palestine. I mean, where that just illustrates how much more connected he is to, like, the beating heart of the Republican base than culture war DeSantis, Meatball Ron.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like Ron is running for president of like the comment section or something. You know, like
Yeah.
Ron is going for what he sees as the red meat that the base eats up, and it's like crime in blue cities. Which, you know, for a portion of the audience, they love that shit. Yeah. But Trump is like, knows what's actually going to get him on TV, right? Like because he is not, you know, as, I mean, obviously he's, you know, very much a creature of the internet, but because he is primarily like a monster created by television, he has a much clearer sense of like, this will get me on TV, and it's going to be, I'm going to East Palestine, like before going to, I don't know, where Ron was in Staten Island or something, being like, yeah, and it's, you know, no one, I mean, you're just not going to get outside the sort of right-wing internet bubble with that stuff compared to like actually getting the networks to pay attention, which is for you know, for Trump, like that still matters, and TV is still where his base lives.
Yeah, and just going to a, not to make too much of this, but it just is, I think, is so illustrative. Going to a McDonald's and being like, I'm buying, it's on me, you know, it's on me. And Ron's at the Chicago Fraternity of Police, like at the police union, speaking to 100 cops.
139 people.
Yeah. I mean, he's really, that's just bad politics. He's got... his barometer's off.
Right. I know. I think it is. I think it has. And that's been my take on Ron for a while. And, you know, obviously I could end up proven wrong here, but he's been playing on easy mode in Florida in the sense that he has, like, just in addition to the incredible amount of power he has in government, he's just been playing purely for the right-wing press for so long that, you know, not to paint Trump as someone who was like, you know, crossing the divide or whatever, but Trump knew to like play for the cheap seats, and Ron, his only experience is like in getting the right-wing press to, you know, applaud him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he just hasn't had to like appeal to anyone outside of that. And say what you will about Trump, but like, you know, as divisive as he was, he actually worked to get people to like him, and just in his insane way.
Yeah. I mean, what do you make of their the conservative media and Republicans trying to make what's happening in East Palestine about anti-white racism? It seems like kind of like it's an updated version of, you know, liberals are talking down to you and they're coastal and they treat you like it's flyover country. And frankly, Biden not showing up there doesn't help that at all. Is there any there?
Well, I mean, it follows this pattern of stuff that would have been sort of coded and implied before. Like it's well-worn territory for conservative messaging, but like so much else, it's just so much more explicit in a way that is often kind of frightening now. So I think that, like, whereas before it would have been this sort of, and you still see a lot of them basically using this language, but it would have been before, like, Biden doesn't care about real Americans. Biden doesn't care about the heartland. Democrats, don't care about, middle America. And they're by making it sort of much more explicitly racial, it's following this sort of very disturbing pattern in all of conservative politics by just explicitly making it like Biden, is against white Americans. So I don't know. In that sense, I think it just represents this ratcheting up of the rhetoric over the last, dozen years or so. But at the same time, like, I'm not sure, again, how much appeal that messaging has. I think it's an easy thing to sort of hit Biden over, but, I don't know how compelling that message really is, right? I mean, I think it's a bit of a, it works easier on some people than it does for all of his faults. It's harder to make that stick to Scranton Joe Biden. Just
Right.
always has been harder to make that stick to him.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what's so fascinating about his approval ratings being relatively low, although I know they've hit new highs recently. He's up at like 49%. But it doesn't, his people are ambivalent about him. And for the first time in American politics, it's just like not necessarily a bad thing for the Democrats, because it's just, I think there is this nationwide desire outside of the Republican base for some sense of calm and normalcy after those years. And that has carried this guy a long way. Plus the fact that he's just old, white, boring Joe, and none of the standard Republican attacks of he's a secret Muslim or he's a shrill bitch for Hillary, who's also really corrupt. That doesn't stick that much.
No, and that's been, and it is funny that I think you can make the case that a lot of Biden's middling approval is due in part to a lot of people who voted for him not being in love with him, right? And there are worse problems to have.
Mm-hmm.
But like as you say, I think there's been this story since the 2020 election of conservatives being just driven bonkers by the fact that they can't get those kind of attacks to stick. And like, what is Hunter's laptop if not a sort of like extended complaint that that it didn't work in 2020 and it should have worked, like,
right.
The reason they are sticking with it to this day is they're like, it's not fair that whatever this was didn't work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and it's just so funny that it's a much more, paper thin and silly version of Hillary's complaint, but they're just applying it to the laptop. I mean, about Russia. Yeah. Which they mocked endlessly. Well, let's talk about George Santos a bit.
Sure.
Because I saw you spoke on the Politics of Everything with Daniel Strauss about this completely hilarious figure I mean, we're living through history with George Santos right now. Like, what to make of this phenomenon? Because I am tickled, I tell you, Alex, by his recent pivot to being anti-establishment. He's like going on Matt Gaetz's show and and then admitting that he lied on Piers Morgan. And his new narrative is, well, I didn't lie to voters. I lied to the Republican establishment, the rhinos. And it's not the worst move. That's what's amazing.
He's the only guy. I mean, he really, because the guy is just a sort of a born liar, right? A congenital liar, I guess. There's only so many places you can go, and none of those places is like contrition. None of those places is like a full and honest account of everything I've done. That's just not one of that option's not available to him. And so, like, as his options kind of narrow, he's kind of adopting whatever track like now seems most likely to help him survive in by whatever sense. David Roth wrote a great piece for Defector that sort of made this point that, like, if Santos used to lie about kind of really silly and lightweight stuff, like being a producer of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which is just one of the best lies a person can tell.
It's so good. Also because it was such an epic failure.
Yeah, it was really one of the most disastrous shows in the history of
I'm
Broadway.
a producer of Evan Almighty too, right?
Yeah. But if his lies were sort of like a lot of these things were meant to make him seem important or whatever. But then, like, as he drifted into Republican politics, his lies got a lot more sort of in the service of playing this particular part. And that's where you get to stories like his mother dying of 9/11 related causes. And even like being in one of the buildings when, the evidence seems to suggest she was not in the United States at the time. But I believe he has doubled down on that one. And what's happening now is I think he doesn't have much electoral. He doesn't have much electoral future left. I think we all like to sort of think there's nothing that's too rotten for Republican voters to accept. But in his kind of swingy Long Island district, they seem to hate him. Like, they seem to really be upset that they have elected this buffoon. So I don't think he's got much of an electoral future left.
No.
But if he has a political future left, this is it. Like, this is all he has left to him. And it's going to be a guy who got famous for really stupid reasons and is famous for doing just like clearly wrong and bad things. And if he can turn that into being a victim of the rhinos and the establishment and the media, that's your ticket to just continuing your career forever on the sort of right-wing cruise circuit.
Alex, yeah, I, for some reason, watched 20 minutes last night of Triggered by Don Jr. with Kyle Rittenhouse, just seeing if there was anything that I could mine for the show. Turns out Kyle Rittenhouse barely speaks. Don Jr. talks the whole time about how we're the same. We're both being persecuted by, right? He's a terrible, terrible host.
Except he does it to animals on safaris.
That right. But to your point, like, that's just, the podcast is atrocious. But it's just like general aggrievement, woe is me, even if I'm a terrible person or a murderer or, the son of a crook and a crook myself. I mean, it's just all about what has been done to me. And Santos, that's why he actually might have a future. And this pivot is smart for him to be anti-establishment, because that ecosystem, it doesn't matter how toxic you are. It's a toxic waste dump in and of itself. So come on in.
Yeah, exactly. and that's where being toxic is something of a badge of honor, like, yeah.
Can I just insert this tweet into the...
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so last night, I think it was, or yesterday, George Santos tweeted out this, which makes it look like he's like building allies across the party. I want to personally thank Josh Lafazan for stopping by my Douglastown office today. It was great to sit down and discuss the concerns that were addressed in the letter he brought in. #New York Third. And
normal politician, normal member of Congress tweet, right?
Yeah.
Just a normal.
I have a friend.
Yeah.
And my friend came over.
And Josh says, let's be very clear. I did not stop by your office. I hosted a protest outside your office, calling on you to resign, and then hand-delivered you a letter to stop wasting police resources. Can't say I'm surprised you choose to sort the truth here. You're very good at it.
So what's amazing is Santos welcomed that. He welcomed that.
He also, he thought he was very cleverly going to, like, I don't know, come out in front of it by being like,
Right.
thanks for stopping by.
Yeah,
It's
my
like,
friend Josh Laffison, he lives
Yeah.
in Canada. You wouldn't know him.
I would. I
met him
really
at
want to.
camp.
I want to thank my good friend Scabby the Rat for coming by my office today. He really
Productive
brought
discussion.
It really brought some important issues to my attention, and
Right,
I look
Tom and
forward to
Jerry.
I look forward to a productive dialogue with him.
It is. It's a funny story, right? Everything about George Santos. I can't get it. I
Yeah.
partly can't get enough of it. But does it say anything largely about the Republican Party? Or how about this? What is disqualifying at this point in history for a Republican candidate? And also, as an aside, what the hell happened to the notion of opposition research? Because the New York Times was able to find this pretty easily. And he had a Democratic opponent who lost to him by 8 points, didn't come up with pretty much any of this during the race.
Yeah, I mean, the topic of opposition research was actually what our episode of The Politics of Everything was about when we were talking about Santos. We talked to Tyson Brody, who has done opposition research for years for Democrats, and he didn't work on that race, but he doesn't. He seems to think that like opposition research, is both like not entirely to blame for this in the sense that if they had been given the resources and the time, they could have actually done this. And then it's a question of where you're directing the resources and the time, not just on the campaign level, but at the sort of party level. I think that it's a little funny too, because normally you could point to the sort of death of the long, slow death of the local press for letting a Santos sort of slip through like that. That's a lot less true in metropolitan New York area, where Long Island has its own newspaper, and there are multiple dailies in New York, and there's a million websites covering local politics too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a lack of journalism problem here. It was just like very little attention was paid to this race. And then, that could be a national problem or a state Democratic problem of not thinking that Santos was serious enough to actually devote resources to uncovering this stuff and publicizing it, and the question of like, is there anything you can say or do that renders you unelectable anymore? I think there still is. It's just that many, it varies depending on in which party you wish to run for office, from which party you wish to run for office. But also, if you are a challenger, basically, and this was an open seat, but it was one that was Democrats were trying to hold, and you can just sort of get away with being the other guy. You can just sort of get away with that, and for a little while at least, and also like happen to be one of the most ridiculous human beings ever to walk the earth. But when the political winds are at your back, a guy like Santos can get in. And I think that's going to keep happening, but probably hardly anyone is exactly like him. He's one in a million.
He is a very special flower.
He really is.
I feel like the thing that's going to happen from Santos is all the people who lie, but less like sort of dramatically, are just going to get passes now,
right?
Because I think there's these guys who like lie flagrantly, politicians that lie flagrantly about their story are a dime a dozen, I think.
Yeah, totally.
They just haven't stolen money from a vet's dog and like a elderly woman committed elderly abuse across continents.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, I mean it's totally. I remember years ago, I writing about Lindsey Graham, who for years had essentially pretended to be a Gulf War veteran using really, really dodgy language. And he was in the armed forces at the time of the Gulf War, but was not a Gulf War veteran. And, he got caught on that decades ago. Just didn't stick, right? And I remember just like I learned that myself and was like, I'm going to write about this.
Yeah.
And it didn't really matter. No one really cared. It's Lindsey Graham. No, people, people.
How many Republicans? How many Republicans remember that versus how many Republicans remember that the guy who confronted the Covington Catholic kids did something mildly similar?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Well, it is. I mean, like if Trump opened the Overton window of lies, it's like Santos kicked the door in or whatever.
Yeah.
There's different openings there, but the truth is not necessarily going to matter to Republican voters, but I don't know if it ever had. It's just more people have tried, and now the universe is expanded for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. People can check out The Politics of Everything, the AP Substack newsletter, and your work over at The New Republic. Alex Pareene, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to be joined by Olayemi Olurin. We are back, and we are joined now by Olayemi Olurin. I got it right in the break. Movement lawyer and political commentator, also known as Ole. Ole, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's a long time coming. I'm so glad to have you on. We were... Let's first talk about your piece in Teen Vogue. You have some great work out recently about the murder of Tyree Nichols. Yes. And Teen Vogue, it's kind of amazing. They have great writers and a lot of more radical stuff than you would anticipate given the title of the publication. Because I grew up, reading it for like what to do with my makeup or how to talk to a boy. But they really do have great writers, including yourself. I mean, you write about how policing is a systemically racist system. Yeah. That's probably not news to our viewers, but it is just important to reiterate because, the entire right wing was like, well, the officers were black, open and shut case. This disproves it. Why did you feel that you wanted to write this for Teen Vogue?
I think they always listen. Whenever someone is killed by the police, there's a familiar song and dance America does, and they always love to feign ignorance about why that is, as though systemic racism hasn't always been the discussion. It's not new. No one has ever been, or the Black community, or anyone that is critical of the police has never said, hey, we have all these problems with police except the Black ones. That has never been the position. The position and the argument has always been that the institution is systemically racist because it was built there. The policing system that we have is there for the purposes of policing Black and brown and marginalized people, and that doesn't change whether or not you diversify the police departments. And I think what happened with Tyree Nichols, I knew prior to the video coming out what was happening, right? Normally, this is a country where over 1,000 people are killed by police each year. And if you're lucky, you might hear about a handful of them because people protest all over the nation begging for charges. And even then, after you see the video with thousands of people protesting, you'll see police departments, you'll see the media, everybody defend it and do their endeavor best to mitigate it and blame the victim. But suddenly now, prior to a video being released, prior to protests, they say to us, hey, this is the most gruesome police brutality you've ever seen. I said, okay, I know what's happening. This is an opportunity to make these Black people, these Black men, the face of police brutality, because that's consistent with a narrative they already have around violence and criminalization and brutality around Black men. And I don't say that as a defense of the officers. I don't want that to be interpreted as, oh, we should be, giving these officers an easier time because they would give white officers an easier time. I say it to say, hey, this is an example of why you don't align with your oppressors, why it does not benefit you to think that you can marginalize your own community, you can abuse your own community, and they will accept and embrace you. They will allow you to do that. But when it stops serving them, you will be treated the same way that these men were treated, because it's not a coincidence that we didn't hear about the sixth white officer or anybody else that was involved in it, but they plastered those photos, right? And that becomes this opportunity to say, hey, look at how we are doing better. Look at us. We are calling out these 5 Black officers, these bad officers that did this. Meanwhile, you don't know who the 8 officers who killed Jayland Walker last year in Ohio are yet. So I was like, this is just an opportunity to address what is just a larger problem in general misinformation. And I was like, you know what, let me take this opportunity to reemphasize that this is the problem with policing overall. This is not a reflection of the fact that policing is not about, the problem with policing isn't about race. This is a testament to the larger institutional problem. And second, there's a general gotcha they like to do where they say, oh, it's not about race, or police kill white people too, or that these are Black officers. Yeah, that's not a mitigating factor to your argument. That actually proves the larger problem, right? That this is a police state. That's what we're saying. I don't want you to look at policing or police brutality as a Black problem or a brown person problem. I wanted to look at it as a problem for everybody. We all live in a country where police are emboldened and militarized and able to kill you with impunity and have qualified immunity and all these different things protecting them. So this was just an opportunity to illustrate that.
Yeah, and I mean, it feeding into a notion that racism is one of individual feelings that one deeply holds, and you're either a racist or you're not a racist, is a narrative that serves to undercut systemic change, abolition, what we're trying to actually do. Systems can be racist, and there are media apparatuses that try to make it about, just what you hold in your heart and how you act towards people in your daily lives. That's part of it. That's how it can manifest. Yeah. But it can also manifest in a systemically racist system where you have 5 Black cops who beat a man to death.
Yeah. And I want people to understand that. And I think focusing it on the individual is one. I think what makes people unwilling to accept where they play roles in this. And I also think it's what makes us not be able to address the larger problem. The reality is this. It's not a personal indictment. It's not a personal indictment on any individual when I say, hey, you live in a racist society. In fact, you live in a racist world, but let's look at the country for the most part. But if you live in a racist society who has racism and white privilege and white supremacy ingrained in its institutions, and those are the mandates of the institutions, it doesn't matter what is in your heart and your soul, you're being indoctrinated in a particular kind of way. And that doesn't say, that indoctrination doesn't stop to say, but you're nice, or but you're Black, or but you're a Democrat, right? You're being fed this everywhere. And I think that's important, is that we internalize the same things. If you constantly have media and propaganda and everything feeding this to you, you're going to regurgitate some of that, and it becomes incumbent upon you to unlearn it. It doesn't make you an inherently bad person that you possessed these kind of biases, but you have to be willing to say, when confronted with new information, well, how have I been educated in a particular way in my society? Is there something else that I can do? How can I unlearn these things? But it's not a white black thing. It's not a Democrat blue thing. That's always something I've been emphasized. I tend to lean on my mother as my moderate example whenever I write things like, oh, my mommy is someone who will call me and be like, but I like Law and Order. Why don't you leave Eric Adams alone? So it's not just Democrats or Republicans or black people versus white people. We're all being indoctrinated in this society.
I think that's, it's such a important point, because a lot of just regular people have a conception of anti-racism that's built on like a personal like HR training exercise. It's the Robin DiAngelo white fragility mentality, as opposed to one that's connected to power sources, structures, systems. Yeah. And unlearning that is really hard, I think, for a lot of people. But it's so much more beneficial to combating racist structures in this country when it comes with an undercurrent of solidarity, as opposed to, you go and learn yourself and figure this shit out. It's almost, I mean, your vision is actually something that's egalitarian and can change society for the better, as opposed to everyone being siloed, and that creates resentment.
Right. And it's a process, right? Like, something I feel like I got asked a lot is people will say, well, what thing can I say in this argument with my auntie or my mummy or such and such that will make them, they can't debate against that, they can't push back. Nothing. There is nothing that you can possibly say that will make anybody just completely abandon their entire worldview in the way that they have been taught to see the world the minute it's challenged. That's just not how it works. It doesn't work that way for anybody. The first time I heard about abolition was in college, as someone who already said the criminal system is racist. I think it is fundamentally racist. I think the society is racist and all these different things. And even when abolition was first presented to me by my mentor and my thesis advisor, Dr. Kathleen Sullivan, she goes, oh, I feel like you would be interested in abolition. And she hands me her prisons obsolete. And I'm like, abolish all the prisons? What you mean? That sounds wild.
Sounds like the purge.
Right. Until I sat down and I looked at, and I remember it being a really eye-opening moment for me. Not even the entire substance of the book, but just realizing, oh, prisons are man-made institutions, huh? I've never, you know what I mean? I've never thought about it like that. We talk about all these institutions, like people will talk about ICE as though, it's the end all be all. Meanwhile, it's an organization that started in 2003. You know what I'm saying? Beyonce been out longer than that. But
the right is so good at naturalizing exploitative institutions and pretending like they exist in the same way that, air and water do on this planet.
Right. And there's a difference between having prisons and having a prison industrial complex. There's a difference between incarceration and mass incarceration. These are policy choices that America made, and it didn't always exist. The prison system that we have, the prison industrial complex, doesn't date back to the beginning of this country. Not that would make it any more legitimate, because there's a whole lot that dates back to the beginning of this country that we don't want any parts of, right? But there was a prison boom. There was a deliberate choice on the part of the Reagans, the Nixons, to make it this way, because this is an opportunity. This is how they went about controlling populations that they no longer could do it in a particular way. But people like to gloss over the reality of the fact that slavery is not abolished in this country. You can't say in the 13th Amendment, we say slavery is abolished, except anybody convicted of a crime, and then we launch a massive prison industrial complex. It's very clear what that is. They transition from one system to another. And I think the reason why people are so reluctant and hesitant to acknowledge it is that they love to say, oh, it's modern day slavery, or it's slavery 2.0. It's all these different things. Because if they acknowledge it for what it firmly is, there becomes no more wiggle room to defend it, right? Because people love to pretend they live in a world where they would have never stood for slavery. They want to pretend like they wouldn't have been the people going, we need time. How are our business going to operate? What are we going to do? But they are the same people doing the same thing, right? So I think there's something to honest conversations, and one, just being graceful on ourselves. And hey, the entire country has been built on this for hundreds of years. You might not be immune to having internalized some of these biases. Yeah.
Right. That is so on point. And I mean, you talk about how there's a difference between mass incarceration and incarceration. How do you draw that distinction, especially like in conversations with other people about this?
I think a beautiful advantage I have is I'm from the Bahamas. I was born and raised in the Bahamas. I moved to America in 2008, and my country has a prison. we have Her Majesty's Prison, otherwise known as Fox Hill Prison. But it is not a common experience in my country for me to know people that are regularly arrested. I don't see Bahamian police and run from them or feel fair or anything like that. That's not a normal part of the Bahamian experience. I was surprised when I became an attorney and I realized in America, you have an argument with people, you curse people out, any little thing, and it becomes policed, right? Police are supposed to be something that is there for true crime, not the way that it is constructed, not there to exist in particular communities or harass people. There's no community you live in the Bahamas where police are just filled and lying there. It's not a normal occurrence that every single night in my neighborhood, I've talked about this, I live in Flatbush, there has been police conducting an illegal checkpoint outside my window every night for a month. I see police on every corner. There's a police. I can literally see NYPD outside my window right now. That's not a normal way that we go about policing. So I think that is the difference, right? The over policing of it and the recognition of that, because America knows that. You know, when you go into a Black neighborhood, you go into a Black community or anywhere, you go certain places in Brooklyn, suddenly you see a wealth of police that are interacting much differently, because you might see the police in Manhattan, but the way they, hey son, hey girl, you know what I mean? They smile at you. That is not the same way that they are interacting with us in this neighborhood. So I think you feel the lived experience that's different.
Yeah. How do you think that affects people's relationship with the state and skepticism about like what government can do when their primary interactions with the state are police acting as occupying forces in their homes and their neighborhoods?
I think we're living the effects of, right? The reality is the people that lobby for the police the most, the people that are most in support of the people that want police never want them for their own communities and because they're interacting with them. It's always to place them elsewhere. People that actually have police in their communities, who interact with police, who are of policed populations, are never in favor of that. We constantly tell you, they do not make us safer. We live in fear of them, that this is not new. And I think that is an important point. If you even take it back to the Tyree Nichols, what I said was, they took this opportunity to try to make it as though we haven't been talking about systemic racism and policing all a while. But if you look historically in our community, that's why in my op-ed, I'm making a point to quote James Baldwin and NWA, right? I wanted to show you there's just how vast of an awareness this is across every demographic of Black person. There is no Black person that can class our way out of it or isn't aware of this reality. So I think that really speaks to the essence of it.
Yeah, well, I really encourage everybody to check out your piece in Teen Vogue. It's just so well said. And you also had another piece this February. Was it in the Appeal, or am I okay? Yes. Yeah, check that out as well, everyone. Say it so well. I wanted to talk a bit about this anti-trans legislation in the country, if you don't mind, Ole.
Absolutely.
So I headlined this earlier, but Tennessee just passed it's going to the governor's desk to sign. He almost certainly will sign it, Republican, a ban on drag shows. And the first offense for having a drag show is a misdemeanor. The second is a felony. These are the free speech warriors. Let's listen, though. This is from Tuesday, ahead of the bill, which unfortunately did pass. This is a drag queen in Tennessee. Shoot, I didn't write her name down over here. Wait, here I have it. Bella Duvall. And she's basically imploring the rest of the audience here to do something about this, and just speaking about what the stakes are for the drag community in Tennessee.
The Senate has already passed SB 3. And this next week, the House will vote on it. If they pass it, it will go on to the governor. And regardless of whether he signs it, here in Tennessee, it can still become a law. If this law passes on April 1st, public drag will now be criminalized. I could go to jail for 15 years for appearing outside in drag. Oh shit! They also seek to classify us as adult cabaret performers. So that means that we would have to get a stripping license. If you have one of those, you cannot also have an alcohol license. So our bar couldn't even serve liquor anymore. This is an attempt to erase drag in Tennessee. This bill will further harm trans people who are literally just living their fucking lives. I need you to contact your House representative and tell them this will not stand. Urge them to vote no, because if they don't, this will make public pride illegal this year. Now, if you don't know, we've been having public drag in Tennessee for over 50 years, and pride began to commemorate the events of Stonewall. Back in Stonewall, we weren't allowed to do drag. It was criminalized. And so what happened when the cops came in and tried to beat us down? We picked up them bricks and sent them packing. The original pride was a riot. And if this year we need to remind them that we will fight for our liberation, we will raise our bricks high again and let them know that we will not go quietly.
I mean, badass, right? But this is the kind of action that's going to happen throughout the country. This is not just a one-off. Idaho just passed a bill that makes it a felony to provide gender-affirming care for kids under the age of 18. Tennessee, in tandem with this anti-drag bill, also passed similar legislation. But like the Stonewall uprising, when it happened, drag queens, trans people, gay people, all stripes involved in that. And that kind of solidarity is going to be needed because we are in the midst of a tidal wave of this kind of, just like genocidal rhetoric, and then also laws that they're going to successfully implement within the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's about bigotry and control. That is just the reality. The Republican Party is not doing anything new. They are galvanizing around the same things that they always have, and they are just rebranding and reframing it. And that's what it's about. If you look at, it's no different than the attack on critical race theory. That's just a pretense, and that's all it ever was. And I think it was a mistake on the part of us to engage them in the weeds. All it ever was about how do we attack Black authors? How do we keep Black and from Black history, accuracy, anything that might shift the social consciousness into a way that supports equity? How do we come up with a pretextual reason, a pretense to be able to go after that in this community? And that's what you see them doing, because to this day, they can't define critical race theory. Most lawyers can't. Like they don't know what that is. What they really mean is Black book, Black author. You like that? Was that honest? Take it off. And that's what you're seeing here, and what they're able to do when it comes to the LGBT community, when it comes to trans people in particular. The reason why they are galvanizing around trans people is because what they really oppose is other. That's what culture war and all of these names that they come up with to straw man you are about, right? They oppose other. They oppose marginalized people, and they don't want any mainstream spaces. They don't want people in a society to come up in a way that is inclusive. Because what happens if we allow communities, if we allow the LGBT community, if we allow trans people, if we allow Black people, if we allow everybody to share their history, to share their culture, to celebrate, to allow for children in a new generation to be raised in that, where they're not looking at those people as other, where they're not judging them, where they can delight in these things and community can come around it, you no longer are able to maintain a society that has its institutions built around ostracizing those people. So that's what you're seeing now. And they've turned trans people into a political pawn. And that's why it also speaks to the larger fact that crime is a construct. America does not talk about harm.
Yes.
Crime is a construct.
That was where I was going to go next, Ole. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I really am trying to train myself to when I'm speaking about an injustice or something that's done that's unlawful technically, to speak about it in the terms of morality as opposed to it being a crime. Because there's so many crimes that are just constructs, right? I mean, we see it in the laws that are trying to disenfranchise Black people around the country. Now it's going to be a crime to put on a drag show if you don't have the proper licensing requirements and you serve alcohol. Like, by the letter of the law, that's a crime, but it is a tool of the state to oppress, and so that there's no value in calling it a crime.
Let's be clear. What they really want to do is, it has nothing to do with the drag shows. What it allows them is to create a means to justify harassing trans people. That's why they ultimately they have the kind of laws they have around sex work, and they have these kinds of laws. And then what they do is they target trans people, they target LGBT people, they target particular people inherently, because what they've done is, by creating this law, it allows the police to say they have a reason to be focusing on those people, looking at them. So what you're going to see is gay people, trans people just existing, just being in community with one another, and they're going to call that a drag show, or they're doing something. It's no different than the way they have all these gang databases, and Black people cannot like sit in a lobby. Young Black boys cannot hang out on a corner without being harassed by NYPD and accused of gang activity. Because when they make it, because that's essentially what they're doing. All they're saying is you can't be in community. That's what they're saying. This is something, it's not about harm. No harm has been articulated. It's not about crime. What it does is and that's what I said speaks to the larger what the criminal system is in America in the first place. It allows them to do these kinds of things. Because when have you heard them be like, hey, no one has got to say, white men doing their little riots about their football games or hunting or doing whatever white men be doing on the weekends.
Yeah, right.
No one could get to say that, hey, I don't like it. Those are not my ideals. Listen, I live in a very Black household. Whatever white men do on the weekends is not consistent with my house, but I don't get to pretend it's harmful or offends the morality of my community in ways that need to be helped. Where is the crime? But that's all this is. And that's why I said America's criminal system is not there to stop crime. It's not there to prevent crime. It's not there to help anybody. In fact, it's there to target the same marginalized communities they always have and to reproduce the same kind of harms. And I think that's why whenever you say to people, you want the system abolished, they say to you, well, how are we going to address crime? How will we stop crime? And I'm like, that's not what the system is there to do in the first place. Beyond the fact that it's morally bankrupt because it is slavery, beyond that, it is not only, it's a business, right? And a business is meant to expand. And that's why you see it expanding. And there's no business that makes its money based on allegedly punishing people for alleged crimes that is also going to be in the business of trying to eradicate those crimes, right? That's how they're operating. So I think this really, really speaks to that and what the system is there to do. It's really there to grab other and to continue to find different ways to expand how they grab other. And that's what the trans community is experiencing, because trans people are one of the only is a marginalized group that doesn't have a seat at the table yet. And I think that's what the difference is, right? Like there's ways that they come after marginalized people all day long, we see it, but there's a certain pretextual way that they have to do it for other groups that have made our way into the room, right? They can't come out and be as clear about how they attack Black people. They're like, oh, critical race theory, let's find this way, right? They come at it with, oh, pro-life and all these things or whatever for women. They find different ways to couch it, but trans people don't have a seat at the table. So they're like, all out war, and let's get it on the books before they can get a seat at the table to do anything about it. So that's what we're experiencing.
Yeah. And I mean, also drag is not exclusive equal to trans people in the same.
No, not at all.
Like, right. The point is just that they also are expanding the scope beyond just trans people and targeting their gender affirming care. This is about the larger LGBTQ community, and they see trans people as a little bit, newer to people's minds. There's not as much of a cultural kind of understanding of what trans people, that we're getting there, but there are still people who are backwards minded who aren't accepting of it. So it's just more useful to go after broader gay people, LGBTQ culture. And they want them to be either in the closet or to kill themselves. Like that is what they want.
That's absolutely it.
And I'm curious, and this will be, my last question for you. Like, you're a lawyer. When you speak to other lawyers and you talk about the law as a construct, what's the reaction? Because I don't hear. My parents were lawyers. I don't hear this kind of talk really.
Yeah, there's a new lawyer of today that I think I'm more in keeping. With.
Right.
Listen, I think any lawyer that's really honest with themselves knows the law is a Mickey Mouse operation. There's a way, it just is. There's a way that people, think of it as this reverence or this inherent rightness or this inherent objectivity that doesn't exist. The law, the reality is, it's regular people. We're all regular people. As sure as you know that, whether or not we have a fancy title to it, how much followers, how much power, how much money, we are regular people with thoughts, processes, and biases. And we're going to go about it that way. And that's what the law is. I can't tell you how many times I've been in court. And first of all, the judge don't know the law, but even if they do, they are going to disregard it. I have a friend who was a prosecutor. I remember one time I wrote a bunch of motions that he's like, yes, you're so right. Listen, so my goody two shoes prosecutor friend. And he's like, yeah, you're going to win these. I'm like, no, I'm not, sweetie. I'm the defense attorney. And he didn't believe me. And I remember when all those motions got denied, I keep trying to tell you about your little system. It doesn't matter care about what you say the law is. And we know that because they'll change it, right? Has Roe versus Wade not been precedent in this country for all of our lives? And look at that. As quickly as that, gut it. And you see all these different things that are being taken to task. At the end of the day, the law is what they say it is, right? Murder is illegal. Police kill people every day. And then people will be like, oh, we need laws to stop them. Don't we have laws? All right. The law is only as strong as how it's applied and who it's applied against and who's applying it and what the intention behind it is. So, I mean, the law is who's ever deciding it, which is why it's harmful when you have the people we have on SCOTUS now, the people that we have in power. And that's why I also don't think the law is something we should look to as what's going to save us. I think that's a mistake. I think once you're in the system, you're a harm reductionist at best. You could do your best to contend with the circumstances that you're in. But the reality is the law is what's there to legitimize all the problems, all the harms, all the powers that be in our system. That's all it's ever been. At very most, you get one little, saving grace, every 30 years, 50 years, you get a Supreme Court case you think you like, and it does a little bit of something, and then the states do their endeavor best to ignore it anyway. So I think the reality is recognizing that power and change isn't going to come from our politicians or from our law. It's going to come from us and how we think and what we feel and what we affirm, which is why there is a deliberate effort to keep certain information out of the mainstream. I think no one ever talks about it that way, but they'll talk about how the protests were so widespread. There were protests in over 500 locations every day across this country in 2020. And then they'll say, oh, but look at all the ways the system has continued to give more money to the police and do all of that as a discouraging thing about supporting the movement. But what I think is a connection they don't make is it lost upon us that after we got these large protests everywhere, suddenly everything came about banning books and keeping all this information and everything out. And it became really, really, really about how do we restrict information and access? Because the reality is, if people knew what the system really operated like, if they knew the actual things and not what they're taught to believe in the propaganda that they were fed, they wouldn't support a lot of these things. So what happens is they'll see a video like George Floyd, and that really moves them, that shocks their conscience, but they're not actually educated about the way that the system works and all the ways in which the system is messed up to allow for that to happen, of those things to happen. So in order to continue those practices, they have to keep people from finding out that information. And that's why you see after all these protests, after a movement becomes so big, you see this deliberate effort to conceal and suppress information, because that's what'll really change it. It's shifting social consciousness. People learn more and they change their viewpoints.
Yeah, and it's censorship, and we're seeing it in Florida, but also across the country. It's just knowledge is power. I know that's old truism, kind of corny, but it is the case. Olayemi Olurin, also known as Ole, movement lawyer, political commentator. Ole, what do you want to plug? Do you have anything coming out?
All the things. I got lots of stuff. All right, so y'all should follow me on Twitter and Instagram, because Twitter is not reliable these days. Follow me at Miss Olurin, MSOLURIN. You should subscribe to my Substack, Olurinati. That is my baby. I publish an essay every month. I have one that's going to come out soon. You should read my last op-ed on Tea and Vogue called Black Cops Are Still Cops. My op-ed on the appeal that's called Mass Incarceration is Slavery, Abolition is a Vision for the Future. I'm going to be on Laverne Cox's show next week, and you should check out my show Leftist Mafia every Thursday night at 8:30 on YouTube. Oh, I think with
our very own Matt Binder too. So you get two for one there. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to have you on again if you're down.
Of course. Thank you, Emma.
Really appreciate it. All right, guys. With that, we're going to wrap up the first hour of this program. We won't be taking any calls today, but we will be having fun in the fun half.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate Olayemi's decor with the Gengar in the background.
Oh,
and
yeah?
Also, if you do follow her on Instagram, she's got a lot of Dragon Ball Z wall art.
Oh, no way. I was admiring her plants because I need to step up my game in my apartment with
I think
my
she
plants.
has professional backdrops and cool / nerdy ones.
Well, that's the perfect
we got
combo.
The professional one with the Gengar in the background.
There you go. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
If you enjoyed our conversation with Alex Pareene about Trump and DeSantis, we went in with Luke Savage, David Griscom, and I for patreon.com/Left Reckoning, our Sunday show this weekend. You want to watch out. It's always a fun conversation to have when Trump is teeing off on reactionaries, and you can sort of have this moment before things get real, and he's invading Mexico because he won his second term.
Right, right. This is when the only time it's fun.
Yeah, it was fun when he was calling DeSantis Meatball Ron. So we're very much in that mode right now.
Oh yeah, exactly. All right. Well, and then on ESPN, we spoke about Karl Malone. We spoke about Daniel Jones's contract situation. We talked about Russell Wilson's scam charity. I basically went really hard into why I hate Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks. He's generally a terrible person. And it looks like he might actually force his way to the Rangers against all odds. So on Monday, I'm going to have to contend with that, maybe, even though he's, an elite player. But that's a bad guy. Anyway, youtube.com/ESPN show. All right, guys, we're going to head into the fun half. I'm going to have a beverage. Maybe Matt will too. So we'll get all loosey-goosey. See you guys there.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back, and then here's some ASMR. Do you hear that? Do it. Not as many bubbles.
A little bit flat. A little bit flat, but
All
I'm
right.
having I'm not having seltzer. I don't want anyone to think just because Emma's drinking seltzer that I'm drinking that.
Right. Well, I
garbage.
mean, that would be very emasculating.
Yeah, I'm drinking the manly drink that different men you would see drinking.
Yes, right, beer. I mean, I gotta say, these are overpriced, these High Noons. But I did get into White Claw one summer. Matt hates it, so he's grimacing and over there. But these are more high-end White Claws. which seems like an oxymoron, but they just taste a little bit better to me. So that's what I'm going with.